Okay, and welcome back to the tutorial series. Now we're going to talk about the bevel tool, which is a form of extrusion. And extruding basically means that we're kind of like throwing a pot in pottery, where we start with a simple object and make it more complex. It works very much the same way, and you'll see what I mean as we go along. So in this particular situation, this is going to be a very easy way to make a complex object. We're going to start with a disc. So I'm going to click on the disc there, and I'm going to look at it from below and draw a nice disc. And then I'm going to give it just a little bitty hint of a bevel down there. And I'll show you why we're going to do that in a minute. Okay, so if I go to my numeric pad, basically what I'm going to do, one of the things I want to do is I want to make this have a lot of geometry on it. So I'm going to increase the sides from 24. I'm going to basically more than double them. Actually, I'm going to quadruple them. Okay, and so you'll see why that's important as we go along, but we're going to keep the segments the same in this particular situation. And I am going to center it, which it's pretty close already. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, turn off disk. I'm going to get right in on this lower part here. And I'm going to go from point mode to polygon mode. And then using the right click, I'm going to draw around that top layer. You'll notice that basically that ring lights up. And if we back up here a little bit, you can see that the top ring is lit, but not the bottom ring. What we're going to do is we're going to stretch that top ring out, and we're going to make something out of it. I'm going to give myself a little room here, so I'm going to go down there. And we're going to go to multiply, and I'm going to take the bevel tool. So then, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. What I want to do is I want to make a wine glass. Nice wine glass. And so we're going to start by left-clicking and moving outward. So let's say we want to have a little bit like that, and I can go as far as I want. I can make that like a bowl or something like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little bit of a suggestion, because in this particular case, every time you make a step here, you create the potential for some nice rounded edges. So I'm going to go, well, let's say out there, well, let's do it this way. Let's make the base of the wine glass like so. And then I'm going to release the button. Then I'm going to right click real quick. Then left click again. And you see I left a little piece there. So what I'm going to do, a wine glass has that base. So right click, left click. And so put a little bit of a curve there. Right click, left click, and then I get right up into the center, so to speak. Make this a nice thin wine glass. Right click, left click, and then I'm going to bring it up like so. Say it like that. And nice thing about this is you can pause anytime you want. So I'm going to go back here a little bit, and I'm going to zoom out so that I'm back here, and left click again. This time, oh, maybe a little bit taller. Right click, left click, right click, left click, right click, left click, right click, left click. So I'll make this a nice big wine glass. Right click, left click, and go down a little bit more. Right click, left click, and this time I'm going to do I'll go way up here, like so. And so the top part here, well, actually that's getting to be kind of a, well, it'll be a kind of a wobbly wine glass. So now here's the most important part. I'm going to pause here for a second. If you look over up here, you'll see that the wine glass has no inside. Basically, everything about this is a closed shape. So what we want to do is we want to make the inside of the glass. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click, left click, and then we're going to come in a little bit, right click, left click, and a little bit more, and sort of form like a lip there, you can see. And then basically we're going to pull that down into the glass. And we want to see if we can bring that right down into the center. So then, if we back up a little bit, you can see that we have a wine glass. So I'm going to turn off Bevel, and the base became a little bit smaller than it was supposed to be, so let's see if we can fix that real quick. So I'm going to go right in on that. And I'm basically just going to select some points there. Oh, make sure I do this right. Select just that bottom part of the points. Actually, that's pretty good. And then I'm just going to pull those out. So I'm going to go to Modify, Size. And, oops. And I'm going to move and pull those down a little bit. I'm going to use the upper area there to check my work. And that is believable. So I'm going to turn off Move, deselect all those. And there we have kind of a wine glass, but good enough for what we're looking for. And now you'll look and you'll see that it's got some nice smooth features because we used a lot of geometry. So we're going to go ahead and save this. Save object. And I'm just going to call that glass. And while we're in here, I'm going to make a new object. And let's say we want a wine bottle. So let's go ahead and do that one real quick. So we go with the disc. And the wine bottle is actually going to be a lot more simple, but we'll make it a little bit larger. And we'll keep the geometry. So here, make sure my radius is the same. Oh, just 5. So the radius will be the same. And we'll pull this out a little bit. And we'll center it. And then actually got to be in polygon mode, because if you select the points it won't work quite as well. So there is my basic shape, and if I go into multiply and choose bevel, so that can be like so. So I'm just going to make this really a tall bottle. I'm not going to put quite as much detail into this because it's going to be kind of in the background. Really, the glass is the star of the show. see, one thing I am going to do is I'm going to give the suggestion that there's something inside the bottle, but that's actually as much detail. Actually, no. Well, we'll just stop there. We'll make that a kind of a solid bottle. But what I am going to do is I'm going to create a cork for the bottle. So if I go over here to the second layer, I put this in the background, and I'm going to do this one by eye. I'm just going to create another disc, start in the center, and basically line it up. Now in this particular case I could actually leave it like this, but I won't. So the cork is coming out of the bottle. And let's go ahead and select, I'll go into point mode. I'm going to select these points and just stretch that out just a bit to create the illusion of kind of a cork being stretched. And I'm going to give this one a different surface, so I'm going to select all this. Make sure I'm in polygon mode here. I'm going to select all this and go to change surface, and I'm going to write cork, and I'll just leave the bottle alone. Okay, so we're almost done here. One other object I want to make, save this, save object. I'll call that bottle. I'm going to make one other object, and this is going to be a teacup. And so that one basically will create another disc. And numeric pad, and just basically we're going to center that. Center our viewport here. And like usual, I'm going to grab this top part here, go to multiply and bevel, and this one's going to be a it's important that we try to get a little bit of a lip on that cup so it's not so sharp. And we'll make it a little bit thicker, say, than the wine glass was. So it'll be nice and insulated. And turn off bevel and release this. And now you can see we've got a cup, but we need a handle for it, and that's really what we're going to talk about next. I want to create a handle for this cup, and fortunately there's a nice neat tool that we can use to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the second layer, put this in the background, and I'm going to draw a handle on that cup. So if I go into the Create tab, you'll see there is a way on the bottom where it says Curves. I'm going to go with Sketch. So with Sketch I can literally draw this, and so I'm going to start here and kind of go up like that, and how about that? So that's kind of what I want the handle of the cup to look like. And maybe this part here, turn off Sketch for a second, and if I'm in point mode I can move those points just a little bit. So modify, move, and let's give that a little bit more of a curve, and I'm going to be happy with that. So this is a two-dimensional line, which means nothing in three-dimensional space. So we've got that little hair-thin line, and so what we want to do is we want to put some flesh on that. So I'm going to create a third layer and put the line itself in the background. And we're going to create a disk. So go to create disk, and I'm going to put that disk right there. And make it nice and small. Turn off disk, and I'm going to line that up. If I move with that edge there, it's kind of like threading a needle. And if I look at it over here, I can see that the disk is like right on that line, which is where it's supposed to be. So what I want to do is I want to move that, to extrude that around the shape. So if I go into multiply, and I go into the extend area and go into the more section, we have what's called rail extrude. If I hit that, let's see what that will do. It should follow the line. And it did, except it didn't do a very good job. If you look here, we've got it partially correct, but it did not follow the line perfectly. It created like a little piece of tape there. So I'm going to Control Z that, and I'm going to rotate that a little bit. So modify, rotate. I'm going to rotate that shape and move it back so we can get the bulk of that on there. And then go to multiply and extend and rail extrude, and that's a little bit better getting there. Kind of a thin handle, but it'll still work. And let's say we want to make that a little bit better. So Control Z, I'm just going to rotate it a little bit more. Give it almost a flat look. And multiply, extend, rail extrude, and boom. Okay, so that's pretty good. So at this point, we no longer need the shape. We'll just delete that. And if we call up the cup, hold down the Shift key and call up the third layer, we see that our handle is now in place. And that's actually not bad, but it's not perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to move it in a little bit. So we're going to click on the click on the background layer for the first layer, and we're just going to go to modify, move, and see if we can stick that in there. Now because the cup is thick, the edges there are disappearing, and that should do it. And lo and behold, we have a cup. Maybe not the best cup in the world, but it will work. So then, the last thing we got to do with this is put this in the background, go to Construct, Boolean, Add. And there we go. So then we don't need this anymore. Delete that. And we have our finished product, which I will save as, we'll just call it coffee. And in the next project, we will talk about how to give those some nice surfaces.